Okay. As you can see, we have different tenses. I want you to help me to underline the verbs here in the sentences. For example, number 1. What is the verb here? In number 1.
Having contact.
Having contacted.
Contact.
Very
Having
good.
contact.
Having contacted. Very good. And what about in the second part, in C? What is the verb?
Be.
Wouldn't be.
Wouldn't be. Wouldn't be. Very good. Number 2. What is the verb in number 2?
Had stuck.
Had
Had
stuck.
stuck.
Very good. In B, sentence B, the second part.
Have turned out.
Turn.
Have turned out.
Turn.
Might not have turned out. This is the complete verb. Okay. What about number 3?
Wasn't.
Lie.
Lied to
Wasn't.
Wasn't.
Lie.
Wasn't. And in A,
Might have
Might
believed.
have.
might have.
I have
believed.
believed her.
Okay, very good. So these are the verbs. I'm going to show you how are we going to use these ones, okay? Let me show you here. These are called mixed conditionals, okay? So let's check them. Here I have 2 sentences, and I want you to tell me what are the tenses that we have in these sentences. For example, can you read sentence number 1, please, Krista?
He falsified his passport, so he can't go to Europe anymore.
Very good, thank you. The next one, please, Maria Alejandra.
She is on trial now because she didn't pay her taxes.
Okay, very good, on trial. So I want you to tell me what are the tenses that we are using in these sentences. In the first one.
Simple past.
Simple past, okay? So we have here the verb in the simple past, falsified, right? What about the second part of the sentence after the comma?
Present.
Present,
Simple
right?
present.
The present simple, very good. The second sentence?
Present.
The present simple, yes, we have the present simple. And in the second part of the sentence?
Simple
The past simple, right? So as you can see in these sentences, we are mixing past and present. I'm going to show you the sentences. We are going to transform these sentences in conditional sentences, okay? Here we have, if he hadn't falsified his passport, he could go to Europe. And if she were responsible with her taxes, she wouldn't sería acá, she wouldn't have had been on trial. I'm going to change this for the negative, okay? Let me change it. She wouldn't have been on trial. So I want you to recognize the tenses that we are using in these sentences. In the first one, what is the tense that you can see here?
Past perfect.
Past perfect.
Past perfect, right? Because we have had, well, hadn't. And in the second part of the sentence?
Past simple.
Past.
Simple past.
Simple. Simple past. Okay. Yes, could be. But what is this? What kind of word is this one that we have here?
It's a model.
It's a modal, right? So we use could plus a verb in the base form. Remember, like in the second conditional tense, could, would, or might plus the base form of the verb, right? What about this one? What about the second one? What is the tense that we are
Past
using?
simple.
Past simple.
Past
Past
simple.
simple. And in the second part?
Present.
Present perfect.
Present perfect?
Past
Present
perfect.
perfect continue.
No. ¿Recuerdan cómo llamábamos a este tiempo gramatical en el condicional 3, en el third conditional?
Perfect conditional.
Perfect conditional. Very good, Nicole. Okay. Yes. So we have these tenses, right? In the first part of the sentence, in the if part, we have hadn't falsified, right? And as you can see, we use exactly the same tense in the third conditional, right? But in the second part of the third conditional, we don't use could plus a verb in the base form, right? This is part of the second conditional. And the same here. In this sentence, we use were, like in the second conditional, and we use the perfect conditional like in the third. So as you can see, these sentences are mixed, okay? When we mix the conditional sentences, we are trying to talk about imaginary situations in the past that affect the present. For example, in the first one, this is an action in the past that affect the present, okay? If he hadn't falsified his passport, he could go to Europe. Como pueden ver, es una acción en el pasado que él hizo que afecta el presente. ¿Ok? Entonces esta es una situación imaginaria que estamos imaginando que lo que hubiese pasado. ¿Ok? Lo mismo con la segunda oración. Si ella fuese más responsable con sus impuestos, entonces esta es una acción en el presente. Si ella fuese en el presente más responsable, o si ella fuese siempre más responsable, ella no hubiese ido o no hubiese estado en un juicio. ¿Ok? Entonces vamos a mezclar los dos conditionals que avanzamos anteriormente. El second conditional and the third. Les voy a mostrar cómo los vamos a hacer. ¿Ok? Vamos a hacer un repaso de los conditional sentences. Okay, remember how many kind of conditionals do we have? How many? Do you know conditional sentences?
4, teacher.
4, right? Very good. So the first conditional is?
Zero.
Zero conditional, right? Remember that in conditional sentences, we always have an if clause and a result. Okay? So this is the zero conditional. Do you remember when do we use the zero conditional? When do we use them? The zero conditional.
The present simple.
When? When, not which tense. When? In which situations? What do you think?
When it's generally true.
Okay, when we are talking about something that is true, right? That is generally true. Very good. Yes. So facts that are generally true, right? And as Alicia said before, we use the present simple for the zero conditional, right? We use the present simple in the if clause, and we use the present simple in the result too, right? For example, if you stand on the rain, you get wet. As you can see, both verbs are in the present simple. This is the first conditional. What about the second conditional that we have, that you know? What is the second conditional? After the zero, we have?
First conditional.
The first conditional. Very good. When do we use the first conditional?
A possible situation
Possible
in
situation
the future.
Possible situation in the future. Very good. So it's for possible situations in the future. What is the structure that we use in the if clause and in the result?
Present simple.
Present simple and
Will,
Will, want, plus
Will.
verb.
So future simple, right? Very good. Will or won't plus the verb in the simple, in the base form, right? If you study, you will pass the test or the exam. Okay, so this is a possible situation. And then we have the second conditional that we learned some classes ago. Do you remember when do we use it? The second conditional?
Hypothetical situation.
Imaginary
Hypothetical
situation.
situations.
and real situation.
Okay.
In the present or the future.
In the
Present or
present or
future.
in the future, right? Because we have also the third conditional for hypothetical situations. So we need to specify that this is for the present and for the future, right? Very good. And what do we use here in the if clause and in the result? What are the tenses?
Past simple plus would plus verb.
Very good. Very good. Would plus verb. Remember that here we can replace would for might or for could. Okay, so we can use would, might, or could plus a verb in the base form. Okay, for example, if I won the lottery, I would buy a big house. And then we have the last one that is the third conditional. When do we use it?
In an imaginary situation in the past.
Very good. For imaginary situations in the past and real situations in the past. And we use, in the if clause, we use
Past perfect.
Past perfect.
past perfect. And in the result?
Plus would
Will
plus
have.
Past participle.
have
Perfect
plus past
conditional.
participle.
Yes, the perfect conditional, right? Would, have, plus the past participle. Very good. For example, if you had studied, you would pass, you would have passed the exam. Si hubieses estudiado, hubieses pasado el examen, okay? Very good. So here we have the four kind of conditional sentences that we have, and we are going to use just these two, the second conditional and the third conditional. I want you to have this very clear, the structure that we use for each one of them, okay? Because we are going to mix these two structures, okay? So here we have these two conditionals that we are going to use. In these mixed conditional sentences, we are going to mix the structures. For example, in the if clause, we are going to use the second conditional structure, so the past simple. La primera parte del second conditional, que es el past simple. Y en la segunda parte de esta oración vamos a utilizar el perfect conditional. ¿Ok? Entonces vamos a mezclar estas dos oraciones, por eso se llama mixed. ¿Ok? We are going to mix these two structures. And in the other kind of sentence, we are going to use the third conditional and the second conditional. We're going to use the past perfect in the first part of the sentence in the if clause, and in the result, we are going to use would plus would, could, or might plus a verb in the base form. Okay, so we are going to mix the structures. Okay, I'm going to show you some examples here. So as you can see, this is the second conditional and this is the third conditional. I want you to recognize these conditional sentences, okay? We use these mixed conditionals when we talk about how the unreal present affects the past. The unreal present affects the past. For example, if I weren't so busy, I could have taken a few days off work, last week. Okay, as you can see, we are mixing the two structures. And here we are using the structure of which one? The second or the third? What do you think?
The second.
The second.
The second, right? And here in the second part, we are using
Second.
The third conditional. The second part.
The result of the third conditional, right? Very good. Here we have the other situation in which we can use the mixed conditional tenses to show how the unreal past affects the present. For example, if I hadn't eaten so much, we would be feeling, if we hadn't eaten so much, we would be feeling better right now. Okay, as you can see, we are mixing the tenses here. So we said that we use the second conditional here, the first clause of the second conditional, and in this part of the sentence, we use the structure of the third conditional, right, for the result. And in this one, we use, what is this? Which conditional is this?
The third conditional.
The third conditional, and here we have the second, right? As you can see, we are mixing the sentences. Ok, quiero que me digan qué significan estas oraciones en español para que les entiendan bien. ¿Cómo las podríamos traducir? ¿Cómo las traduciríamos al español? Si alguien tiene alguna idea, puede levantar su mano, así podemos escucharlos. Adriana.
Si yo no estuviera muy ocupada, me hubiera tomado algunos días el pasado fin de semana.
Sí, si yo no estuviera ocupada, ella está ocupada ahora y estuvo ocupada todo este tiempo, right? Si yo no estuviera ocupada, yo me podría haber tomado unos días libres el anterior fin de semana, ¿cierto? Okay, very good. What about the second one? How can we translate it? Emmanuel?
Si nosotros no hubiésemos comido mucho, nosotros nos estaríamos sintiendo más mejor ahora mismo.
Ok, nos estaríamos sintiendo mejor ahora mismo. Sí, very good. Very good. Si no hubiéramos comido mucho, nos estaríamos sintiendo mejor ahora mismo, ¿cierto? Very good. So, as you can see, this is an action that happened in the past and is affecting the present. Está afectando el presente. Algo que yo hice en el pasado y afecta el presente. Y esta es una acción que es en el presente y afecta el pasado. Entonces, esta persona no pudo tomarse los días libres porque está ocupada. ¿Ok? Let's practice. We are going to practice. I'm going to show you some sentences. I want you to think, how can we complete these sentences? If you have the answer, you can raise your hand, okay? It says, Mari is unhappy because she gave up her career when she got married. So you have to tell me the opposite situation, the imaginary situation. Think about it. I'm going to give you some seconds. And if you have the answer, you can raise your hand, okay? Adriana?
If Mary hadn't gotten married, she wouldn't give up her career.
Okay. Could be. Here I have a part of the sentence, and I want you to tell me if you have exactly the same. It says, Mary is unhappy because she gave up her career when she got married. But Mary
Would be.
Okay. Mary would be happy if she
Hadn't
If she hadn't
Hadn't
given
given, right? Hadn't given up her career when she got married, right? Yes, this could be another option. Okay. Another option is Miguel, and right here it says, if Mari hadn't given up her career, she would be happy right now. Yes, very good. You can use any of the ways. Remember that you can write the if clause at the beginning, or you can write it at the end. If you write the if clause at the beginning, you need to use a comma, right, to separate the clauses, as Miguel did it. Very good, Miguel. Okay, let's go to the next one. Professor Smith talked so much about the tribe because she's an expert on African tribal groups. I'm going to give you this example so you can complete the sentence. But Professor Smith, sorry, here we have another last name, talk not so much about the Maasai tribe if she an expert on African tribal groups. What do you think? How can we complete it?
Haven't talked.
Didn't talk.
Didn't talk? Yes? Okay, I want you to think about if the action is in the past, in the present, si el presente afecta al pasado o el pasado al presente. What do you think? But Professor Smith
couldn't talk.
no pudo hablar.
Hadn't talked.
Hadn't talked. Recuerden que
Would
no
talk.
Again, please.
Would talk.
Would talk, hablará o hablaría. Recuerden que no podemos utilizar el past perfect en esta oración porque es el resultado. Solo podemos utilizar el past perfect en la parte de if y el past simple también en la parte de if. Okay? So, what can we say here? Solo tenemos dos opciones aquí para escribir. Podríamos... Again, please.
Wouldn't have thought.
Okay, very good. Wouldn't have talked. Professor Smith wouldn't have talked so much about the Maasai tribe if she en la parte de,
Weren't.
if she weren't an expert on African tribal groups, right? If she weren't an expert. So as you can see, we are using the simple past here. Okay, entonces, ¿qué diría esta oración en español? ¿Qué diría?
Profesor Smith no habría hablado mucho sobre la tribu Masai si ella no fuese un experto en África, en tribus de África.
Very good. No hubiese hablado ella tanto sobre las tribus si ella no fuera una experta, ¿cierto? Very good. So as you can see, here we are talking about an action in the past. Ella no hubiese hablado. Y aquí estamos hablando del presente. Si ella no fuese una experta, ella es una experta, ¿cierto? Let's go to the next example. Nicole speaks Chinese fluently because she lived in China for 10 years. But, ¿qué podríamos decir? Lo voy a dejar así para que ustedes me digan su respuesta. But she what can we say? Nicole speaks Chinese fluently because she lived in China for 10 years. But she, or but Nicole,
You wouldn't have
wouldn't have,
Wouldn't
speak
speak.
wouldn't speak
Chinese fluency if she hadn't lived in China for 10 years.
Very good, very good. Yes, so we can say, but Nicole wouldn't speak or couldn't speak Chinese fluently if she hadn't lived in China for 10 years. Ella no hablaría chino tan fluido si es que ella no hubiese vivido en China por 10 años, ¿cierto? What about this one? We are not worried about the recent string of robbery in the neighborhood because the police have started regularly patrolling the area. What do you think? Here we have the idea. But we
Teacher, I think the first is weren't.
we weren't?
Yes.
Okay, why? We weren't worried about the recent string of robberies in the neighborhood. It's the police. Recuerde que solo puede ocupar el past simple cuando la oración empieza con if. Y como puede ver acá, esta oración, la primera parte no empieza con if. Entonces no podríamos utilizar el past simple, right? ¿Qué podríamos decir? Solo tenemos dos opciones acá. Would y un verbo en la forma base o el perfect conditional, que sería would, have, and the past perfect. Past participle, sorry. ¿Cuál podríamos utilizar acá?
We would be.
Would have been.
We would be, right? We would be worried about the recent strains of robberies in the neighborhood. It's if the police
Hadn't started.
very good, hadn't started. Algo que quiero que tengan en cuenta, que quiero que se den cuenta, es que aquí nuestra oración está en presente. ¿Ok? Entonces lo único que tenemos que hacer es poner would y un verbo en la forma base. Y como acá nuestra oración está en pasado, algo que pasó, lo único que tenemos que hacer es ponerlo en past perfect. Lo mismo acá. Oración en presente, entonces lo único que hacemos es poner would y un verbo en la forma base. Y si acá está en pasado, hablamos del pasado, utilizamos el past perfect. ¿Ok? Entonces quiero que reconozcan estos tiempos gramaticales y los transformen a conditional sentences. ¿Ok? Dicen, nosotros estaríamos preocupados de los robos en el barrio si la policía no hubiera empezado a patrullar regularmente el área. ¿Ok? Entonces, tengan en cuenta esos tiempos gramaticales. ¿Ok?
Sure.
Yes.
En la primera, pero está en simple past, ¿no es? Live. Y usó past perfect. Y en la segunda está en present perfect. Igual usó past perfect.
Ok. No me refiero a que esté en el tiempo gramatical, sino que estas dos acciones, recuerde que ocupamos el simple past y también el past perfect para hablar del pasado. Ambas acciones se refieren al pasado. no específicamente, no se enfoque en el tiempo gramatical, sino que ambas hablan del pasado. Ambos tiempos gramaticales son utilizados para hablar del pasado. ¿Ok? No se enfoque en el tiempo gramatical, sino en el significado de la oración, en el contexto. ¿Ok?
¿Y algún consejo que nos da para saber cuándo usar la segunda y la tercera condition mezclada?
Ok.
¿Cómo darnos cuenta?
¿Cómo darse cuenta? Con el tiempo gramatical de la primera oración. Por ejemplo,
Ya, ok.
si dice speaks, no voy a ocupar past perfect. Si dice speaks, si está en presente. ¿Ok? Si dice speaks, voy a ocupar would y un verbo en la forma base, ¿cierto? Porque está en presente. Y, o también puedo ocupar el simple past. ¿Ok? ¿Recuerdan? Es lo mismo que avanzamos con I wish and if only. Cuando hablamos del presente, utilizamos el past simple. Y cuando hablamos del pasado, utilizamos el past perfect. ¿Recuerdan esa regla que avanzamos en la anterior clase? Voy a dejar de grabarlo, ¿ok?